She looked me in the eye inside the recovery room and said, "You are not family." I nodded and walked away like a ghost. But burning in my pocket was the flash drive my son had warned me about. 3 days later, I discovered she was selling everything using documents forged with my signature. When I walked into that courtroom, I did not come for pity. I came to end a lie. My name is Marjorie Caldwell. I have lived in Harrowfield, Pennsylvania, for 30 years, burying a husband and raising a son in a town where the river moves slower than the grief. At 59, I thought I understood how the world worked, especially after spending decades organizing chaos as a records administrator for Northgate Compliance Solutions. I was wrong. The call came at 2 in the afternoon. Evan, a fall, minor, they said, until it wasn't. I drove to the hospital in a storm. My boots were caked in river mud from the garden, and my raincoat dripped dirty water onto the pristine linoleum of the ICU hallway. I did not care. I only wanted to see Evan. He was 35, my only child, and he was dying behind a set of double doors that looked heavy enough to hold back a flood. Tessa Langford stood in front of them. She looked impeccable, as if she had dressed for a board meeting rather than a tragedy. Her blouse was crisp, her hair pinned back without a single stray strand. When I stepped forward, reaching for the handle, she did not move. She simply stepped into my path. "Marjorie," she said. Her voice was not loud. It was terrifyingly calm. "You cannot go in there. He is my son," I said, my voice cracking. "Move out of my way." "Tessa." "No," she replied. She signaled to a security guard standing near the nurse's station. "Officer, please escort Mrs. Caldwell out. She is causing a disturbance." I stared at her. Disturbance. I just want to hold his hand. Is he awake?" "He is sedated," Tessa said, smoothing her skirt. Then she delivered the words that would echo in my head for the rest of my life. "You have no legal standing here, Marjorie. The doctors take instructions from me. You're not family." The guard stepped between us. "Ma'am, you need to step back." I looked at Tessa. I expected to see grief, or panic, or at least the exhaustion that comes with watching a husband suffer. I saw none of it. I saw calculation. As the guard guided me back, I heard her speaking to a resident doctor, Dr. Evans, regarding patient file 492 Alpha. "I need the updated prognosis for the insurance claim," she said. She rattled off the file code and the doctor's name with the ease of someone who had rehearsed it. I spent 20 years managing compliance records. People do not memorize alphanumeric case files in the first 6 hours of an emergency unless they have studied them. I sat on a plastic chair in the waiting room, shaking from the cold and the shock. A nurse, an older woman with tired eyes, checked the trash can near me. She paused, looking at Tessa down the hall, then leaned in close to me. "He signed a new medical power of attorney," she whispered, barely moving her lips. 2 days ago. The chart says he was on heavy pain management when he signed it. It seemed rushed. Before I could ask her name, she was gone. Evan survived the night, but he did not wake up. Eventually, the shift changed, and a sympathetic night guard allowed me to stand by the glass partition. I saw him. He looked small amidst the tubes and wires. The ventilator hissed and clicked, a mechanical rhythm counting down the seconds. Whoosh, click. Whoosh, click. I sat back down on the hard bench and opened my wallet. My hands were trembling so bad I almost dropped it. I pulled out a photo of Evan from when he was 10, grinning with a missing front tooth, holding a bluegill he had caught at the creek. I remembered a rainy afternoon 3 years ago. Evan had come over alone, looking worn out. He had sat at my kitchen table and said, "Mom, I love her, but she's sharp. If Tessa ever makes you cry, promise me you won't stay silent. You fight back." I had laughed it off then. I was not laughing now. I drove home in the pitch black. The house was empty and cold. I did not turn on the lights. I just sat in the kitchen, still in my muddy coat, staring at the dark window. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. The screen was bright in the darkness. It was a text message. The sender ID said Evan. My heart hammered against my ribs. I opened it. "Mom, if something happens, open the USB in the kitchen drawer." I went to the kitchen drawer where I kept the spare batteries and takeout menus. My fingers brushed against cold metal. It was a small, silver flash drive. I plugged it into my laptop, my heart beating a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The screen flickered to life. There were 2 files inside. One was a scanned document titled Family Trust Caldwell Riverbend. The other was an audio file. I clicked the audio file first. Evan's voice filled the silent kitchen. It sounded tinny, echoing slightly as if he had recorded it in a bathroom or a car. "Mom, if you are listening to this, it means things went wrong. I don't know if I'm being paranoid, but Tessa has been asking about the deed to the cottage again. She keeps saying that as my legal wife, she should handle the investments. I had a lawyer draft the trust documents just in case. Don't let her take Riverbend. It's Grandpa's legacy." I replayed the clip 3 times. His voice was tired. I could hear the stress in the pauses he took between sentences. I opened the second file. It was a draft for a trust, designed to protect his assets, specifically the Riverbend cottage, a property my late husband had built with his own hands. Then I logged into Evan's email account. He had given me the password years ago when I helped him set up his small business, and he never changed it. I found a notification from his life insurance provider. The subject line confirmed a change of beneficiary. Evan had removed Tessa and designated a local charity, the Harrowfield Youth Fund. But then I saw something that made my blood turn to ice. The email was marked as read. The timestamp showed it had been opened yesterday at 4 in the afternoon. At 4 in the afternoon, Evan was in a medically induced coma. He could not have opened that email. Someone else had the password. I drove back to the hospital at 7 the next morning. I walked straight to the ICU, ready to demand answers about his condition. I stopped at the double doors. The bed in room 304 was empty. The sheets were stripped. The monitor was dark. I grabbed the arm of a passing nurse. "Where is he? Where is Evan Caldwell?" She checked her clipboard. Frowning, "Mr. Caldwell was transferred 2 hours ago. His wife arranged for private transport to a recovery facility. What facility I demanded? I am his mother." "I'm sorry, ma'am," she said, her voice practiced and hollow. The instructions were strict. No information is to be released to extended family without Mrs. Langford's consent. I walked out to the parking lot and dialed Tessa. It went straight to voicemail. I called again. The line clicked and went dead. Blocked. I called the hospital switchboard from my car. "I would like to be connected to the room of Evan Caldwell," I said. "One moment." The operator said, Then? I'm sorry. We have no patient by that name listed in our current census. I sat in the driver's seat and gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Panic wanted to take over. It wanted me to scream and pound on the dashboard, but I pushed the panic down into a small, tight box in my stomach. I had spent 30 years in compliance and records management. I knew how to track things that people wanted to hide. I drove home and cleared my dining table. I took out a fresh yellow legal pad and a black pen. I wrote timeline at the top. I wrote down every interaction, every time, every name. Then I called Brenda. She was an old colleague from Northgate who used to handle internal audits. Brenda, I said, I need to know how to track a property transfer before it is recorded in the final books. Marjorie, she asked, sounding surprised. You check the county clerk's pending intake portal. It shows filings the moment they cross the desk, even before the stamp is dry. Why just checking on the cottage? I said. I hung up and navigated to the county records website. My internet connection was slow, and the page took forever to load. I typed in the parcel number for Riverbend Cottage. The search results populated. My breath hitched. There was a new entry, dated this morning at 9 o'clock. It was an application for a quitclaim deed, transferring ownership from Evan Caldwell to a new entity. The applicant listed was not a trust. It was not a lawyer. The text on the screen read, Applicant Tessa Langford, Spouse. I stood at the counter of the Kenton County Recorder's office, my hands pressed flat against the cold glass partition. The air smelled of stale coffee and toner ink. I watched the clerk, a young man with heavy eyelids, slide a photocopy across the laminate surface toward me. Here is the spousal consent form filed this morning, he said, tapping the paper with a pen. It waives any conflicting interest in the property transfer. Standard procedure when a deed is moved out of a marital estate into a sole holding. I looked down. My breath caught in my throat. At the bottom of the page, right next to the date, was my name, Marjorie Ellen Caldwell. It was not just my name, it was my signature. It had the slight tremor in the capital C that I had developed over the last 5 years due to mild arthritis. It had the way I always abbreviated my middle name to just an E with a long tail. I did not sign this. I whispered. The clerk shrugged, already looking at the clock on the wall. It is notarized, ma'am. Whatever dispute you have is civil, not administrative. We just file the paperwork. I walked out of the building feeling like the ground was shifting under my feet. It was not just a forgery, it was a study. I closed my eyes, and the memory hit me hard. 2 months ago, Tessa had sat at my dining table. She had brought over a stack of forms for my supplemental health insurance. Let me help you with that. Marjorie, she had said, her voice dripping with sweetness. Your hand gets tired so easily. Just sign the practice sheet so I can make sure it matches the digital record. She had watched me sign my name over and over again. Then she had taken a picture of my driver's license, claiming she needed it to book a flight for a family vacation that never happened. She had been collecting pieces of my identity like a vulture collecting bones. I got into my car and drove straight to Riverbend Cottage. When I pulled into the gravel driveway, my stomach turned. The old brass lock on the front door, the one my husband had installed 30 years ago, was gone. In its place was a shiny, electronic keypad. But the real blow was the wooden sign hammered into the lawn. Coming soon, Pine and Wharf Realty. A sleek black sedan was parked near the porch. A man in a blue suit was stepping out, holding a tablet. I slammed my car door and marched over to him. Who authorized this listing? I demanded. The realtor looked up, adjusting his glasses. He offered a practiced, hollow smile. Good afternoon. We are preparing the property for an open house next week. The owner is looking for a quick cash sale. The owner is my son, I said, my voice rising, and he is in a coma. The man checked his screen, swiping a finger across the glass. Actually, the deed is currently held by Tessa Langford. The title search came back clean this morning. We have all the documentation. He paused, looking me up and down, noting my old raincoat and the mud on my boots. Are you a neighbor? We can let you know when the viewing hours are public. I felt the blood drain from my face. I was being erased. I did not scream. I did not argue. I turned around, got in my car, and backed out of the driveway. I drove to Westbridge, to the apartment complex where Evan and Tessa lived. I needed to find something, anything, that would tell me where she had taken him. I used the spare key Evan had given me years ago. The door swung open. The apartment was empty, not just messy, but stripped. The furniture was gone. The pictures were taken off the walls, leaving pale rectangular outlines on the paint. It looked as if they had evaporated into thin air. I walked back out to the hallway, feeling dizzy. A delivery driver was wrestling a hand truck down the corridor. He stopped when he saw me staring at the open door. They moved fast. Huh? He said, wiping sweat from his forehead. You saw them? I asked. Yeah. Saw a crew here last night. He replied, I was dropping off a package for the neighbor. They were loading boxes of documents and a small safe into a van. Not a moving truck, just a cargo van. Did you see where they went? I asked. Desperate. He shook his head. No. But I saw the label on the side of the boxes they were reusing. They had stickers for Lockhaven storage on them. Unit 42. I only remember because 42 is my lucky number. I stood there in the silent hallway. Tessa thought she had won. She thought she had buried me under legal statutes and forged signatures. She thought I was just a helpless old woman who would cry and fade away. I walked to the elevator. I was not going to cry. I had spent 40 years organizing files, tracking discrepancies, and finding errors in corporate ledgers. I knew how to follow a paper trail. I was going to take her down, not with a gun, but with the one thing she did not expect. I was going to use her own paperwork against her. I sat in my car outside a brick building that had seen better days, staring at the steering wheel. My stomach growled, a hollow sound that took me back 20 years. I remembered a winter when Evan was a freshman in college. The tuition bill had come, and it was $400 more than we had budgeted. That month, I stopped buying meat. I ate toast for dinner every single night so that my son could have his biology textbooks. I remembered sitting him down when he graduated, holding his diploma. I had told him, Evan, knowledge is power. But you never use the law, or your education, to hurt people who cannot fight back. Tessa was doing exactly that. She was using the law like a bludgeon. I had a choice. I could drive home, lock the door, and let her strip the flesh from my family's legacy until there was nothing left but bones. Or I could break my own rule. I could use the law to hunt. I got out of the car and walked into Klein and Mercer Legal Aid. Dana Klein was younger than I expected, perhaps in her early 30s, with hair pulled back in a severe bun and eyes that looked like they had read too much fine print. Her office was small and smelled of old paper and peppermint tea. I did not waste time with pleasantries. I placed the USB drive and my handwritten timeline on her desk. My son is missing, I said. His wife is selling his property while he is in a coma, and this signature is a forgery. Dana picked up the timeline. She read it in silence. For 10 minutes, the only sound in the room was the ticking of a wall clock and the scratch of her pen as she made notes. Finally, she looked up. "This is a mess. Mrs. Caldwell," Dana said, leaning back. "If we want to stop this, we need to hit 3 specific targets. First, we have to prove the signature on that spousal consent form is fake. Second, we have to attack her status as a spouse. If she is not his legal wife, she has no power. Third, and most importantly, we need to freeze the assets immediately. I do not have thousands of dollars for a retainer," I said, looking at my hands, "but I have 30 years of experience in records management. I know how to find things. I know how to organize evidence so a judge cannot ignore it." Dana looked at me, then at the timeline again. A small, sharp smile touched her lips. "I like clients who do their homework. We will file for a temporary restraining order against the sale of Riverbend Cottage and the bank accounts. We do it today." She typed furiously. I watched her, feeling a flicker of hope. It was the first time in 3 days I had not felt completely alone. But the system does not care about hope. It cares about boxes being checked. 2 hours later, Dana put the phone down. Her face was pale. The judge denied the immediate emergency order. She said quietly, "Why?" I asked, standing up. "The fraud is obvious, not to the court." Dana replied, "The court sees a wife managing her husband's assets during a medical crisis. To challenge her, you need standing. They are demanding proof of a legal family relationship that supersedes hers, or a death certificate, or a power of attorney naming you. And since Tessa has the current medical power of attorney, I cannot get those papers," I said, my voice trembling with rage. "Because she has them. And I cannot ask Evan because I do not know where he is." Dana took off her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. "That is the wall we just hit. Marjorie. The court assumes she is acting in good faith because she has the marriage certificate and the medical proxy. Until we find Evan, or prove she is harming him, she holds all the cards." I walked out of the office into the grey afternoon light. The reality settled on me like a heavy coat. I could not just fight this on paper. Filing motions was not enough. To win this, I had to find my son. I had to find out who was helping Tessa hide a grown man in plain sight. I looked at my timeline again. The storage unit. Lock Haven Storage. If I could not find the body, I would find the secrets. Lock Haven Storage was a sprawling grid of concrete and orange metal doors located on the edge of the industrial district. It smelled of diesel fumes and damp cardboard. I walked into the front office at 10 in the morning, putting on my most harmless, confused grandmother face. "Excuse me," I said to the man behind the counter, clutching my purse with both hands. "My daughter-in-law, Tessa, sent me. She said the winter coats are in Unit 42. My son, he is in the hospital, and I just need to grab his heavy jacket." The manager did not even look up from his computer screen. "Name on the lease, Tessa Langford," I said. He typed for a moment, then shook his head. "I see the unit, but your name is not on the access list, ma'am. Only Mrs. Langford has key privileges, but I have the code. I lied. She gave it to me. Policy is policy," he said, finally looking at me with dead, bored eyes. "If you are not on the list, You do not go past the gate. Please leave. I did not argue. I did not make a scene. I walked back to my car, parked across the street near a diner, and I waited. I was not there to break in. I was there to learn the rhythm of the place. For 3 hours, I watched. I noted that the gate code was 6 digits. I saw that the shift changed at 1 in the afternoon. I saw that the camera on the northwest corner had a blind spot behind the dumpster. At 1:15, a young employee with a piercing in his eyebrow came out to empty the trash. He looked bored. I walked over, pretending to fumble with my keys. "Rough day?" I asked. He shrugged. "Same old. People move in, people move out. My daughter-in-law moved a lot of boxes in yesterday," I said casually. "Tessa. She was worried the payment didn't go through because she lost her personal credit card. Did she mention that?" The kid laughed. "Nah, she's good. She didn't use a personal card. I remember because I had to type in the tax-exempt number manually. She put it on a corporate account. Bright Harbor Outreach." I froze. Bright Harbor Outreach. "Yeah," he said, crushing a soda can. "Some charity thing. Lucky her. Tax-free storage." I went straight to the public library and sat at a computer terminal. I typed Bright Harbor Outreach into the search bar. The website was professional, filled with stock photos of smiling elderly people holding hands with caregivers. The mission statement read, "Providing dignity and asset management for the vulnerable senior community." It sounded saintly. It sounded perfect. I clicked on the About Us page. There, listed under the board of directors, was the Chief Operating Officer, Tessa Langford. I checked the contact page. The headquarters was listed at an address in a business park 10 miles away. I drove there immediately. I expected a bustling office with phones ringing and caseworkers helping families. Instead, I found a narrow storefront with a sign that said, "Executive Virtual Solutions." It was a mail drop, a place where companies existed only on paper. I walked up to the receptionist. "I am looking for Tessa Langford," I said. The receptionist, a woman chewing gum, barely glanced at me. "She doesn't work here." "Honey, this is just her mailing address. She picks up her packet once a week, usually on Fridays. All her billing goes through a third-party processor." "Do you know where she actually works?" I asked. "No idea," she said. "We just handle the mail." I walked out, feeling the net tighten. Tessa was not just hiding assets. She was washing them through a fake charity. When I got home, there was a large envelope in my mailbox from the insurance company. It was a duplicate copy of the policy change request I had flagged earlier. I tore it open in the kitchen. I scanned the document until my eyes hit the signature line at the bottom. It was not Evan's signature. It was not even a forgery of his name. The requester was listed as Tessa Langford, temporary legal guardian. My hand shook so hard the paper rattled. She had not just claimed to be his wife. She had filed papers declaring him incompetent. She had appointed herself his guardian, giving her total control over his life, his death, and his money. My phone rang. "It was Dana? Marjorie," Dana said, and her voice was tight. "Urgent. I just saw the filing updates in the system. There are signs that Tessa is constructing a new legal status for herself. She is trying to bypass the marriage dispute entirely by claiming guardianship." "I know," I said, looking at the paper in my hand. "I have the insurance request." She called herself his guardian. "This is dangerous," Dana said. "If she solidifies that status, she can legally bar you from ever seeing him again. Marjorie, if we are slow, she will turn Evan into a ghost on paper. We need to find him. Now. The phone rang at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The screen displayed an unknown number. I knew before I answered that it was her. Juniper Diner. Tessa's voice said. It was not a question. Exit 4 off the highway. You have 30 minutes? Come alone. Marjorie. Or the deal is off. The line went dead. I drove to the diner with a dry throat and a stomach full of acid. Juniper Diner was a relic of the 50s, smelling of burnt grease and stale coffee, situated next to the roar of the interstate. I saw her car immediately. It was a pristine white sedan, parked perfectly between the yellow lines, looking out of place among the rusted pickup trucks. Tessa was sitting in a back booth. She wore a black turtleneck and a grey blazer. Her hair pulled back into a severe, elegant knot. She looked like she was waiting for a business partner, not the mother of the man she had hidden away. I slid into the booth opposite her. She did not offer me a menu. She slid a single sheet of paper across the sticky tabletop. "Sign this," she said. Her voice was low, sweet, and utterly cold. "It is a formal waiver withdrawing your contest to the property transfer and my guardianship. You sign it. I notarize it right here. And I will let you see Evan for 5 minutes." I looked at the paper. Then I looked at her. I forced my shoulders to slump. I let my hands tremble visibly on the table. I needed her to think I was broken. I needed her to think she had already won. "Where is he?" I asked. My voice barely a whisper. "Please, just tell me he is safe." "He is in a safe place," Tessa said, taking a small sip of her black coffee. "The facility is high-end. Private. The doctors agree that he does not need to be agitated by family drama right now. His heart rate spikes whenever he hears loud noises." Is he awake?" I asked. "He drifts," she replied, waving a hand dismissively. "We are having to manage his pain carefully. You know how violently he reacts to morphine. The doctors had to switch him to a synthetic because of the allergy. It has been a nightmare for me. Really." I froze. My breath caught in my chest. Evan was not allergic to morphine. He had been given morphine when he broke his leg in high school without a single side effect. He was allergic to codeine. She was lying. She was inventing medical history to explain why he was sedated. Or worse. She was telling doctors the wrong information to keep him unconscious. I looked at her. Really looked at her. And I realized something terrifying. This was not just about the money. The money was the prize. But the method was the weapon. She wanted to paint a picture. In her version of the story, she was the devoted, protective wife, and I was the hysterical, intrusive mother who had to be kept away for the patient's own good. She wanted to own the narrative so that when she eventually pulled the plug or sold the house, the world would nod and say she did the right thing. I needed to keep her talking. I checked my watch. Dana needed 20 more minutes to get the subpoena for the Bright Harbor transaction logs before Tessa could wipe them. I don't know if I can sign this," I stammered, picking up the pen and letting it hover over the paper. "What if he wakes up and asks for me?" "He won't," Tessa said sharply. Then she softened her tone, a predator mimicking comfort. "Marjorie, look at yourself. You are elderly. You are confused. You are making this hard on everyone. Just let me take care of him. I am his wife. We have a bond you do not understand." "But the wedding," I said, looking down. "You never had a wedding." Tessa sighed. as if explaining something to a toddler. She reached into her leather bag and pulled out a thick envelope. She slid it across the table until it hit my hand. "We wanted it private," she said. "We got married 3 months ago. Here is the copy." I opened the envelope. It was a marriage certificate, embossed and stamped. I looked at the date typed clearly in the center, July 14th. My heart hammered against my ribs. I had the USB drive in my pocket. I had memorized the metadata of every photo on it. On July 14th, Evan was not at a courthouse with Tessa. On July 14th, Evan was on a solo hiking trip in the Adirondacks. He had sent me a video from the summit at noon. He was 300 miles away from the clerk who supposedly stamped this paper. It was a lie. A beautiful, official-looking lie. I put the paper back on the table. I did not sign the waiver. I stood up. "Where are you going?" Tessa hissed, her composure cracking for a fraction of a second. "Sit down. You do not get to see him unless you sign." "I am going home," I said. I did not scream. I did not cry. "I will not sign your paper." "Tessa." "Then you will never see him again," she said, her voice rising. "I will get a restraining order. I will tell the judge you are senile." I walked out of the diner into the blinding afternoon sun. My hands were shaking uncontrollably, but not from fear. I was shaking because I finally understood the game. I was not fighting a person. I was fighting a script. She had written a play where she was the hero and I was the villain, and she had forged the props to prove it. But props are fake, and I was going to burn her theatre to the ground. The office of the forensic document examiner smelled of ammonia and old paper. Mr. Henderson, a man who had spent 40 years testifying in fraud cases, adjusted the lens of his microscope and beckoned me over. "Mrs. Caldwell." "Look at the curvature of the letter C," he said, pointing to the magnified image of the signature on the spousal consent form. "See that microscopic hesitation? That is what we call a pen lift. A natural writer flows. This person stopped to check their work against a model. And the pressure? It is entirely uniform. Real signatures have valleys and peaks of pressure. This is not a signature. Marjorie, it is a drawing. Can you testify to that?" Dana asked, standing by the window. "I can state with high probability that this was a simulation produced by tracing." Henderson replied, "That was our first lever. I went out to find the second. I returned to the street facing the county recorder's office. There was a bodega on the corner with a security camera pointing directly at the entrance ramp. I bought a cup of coffee and $20 worth of scratch-off tickets, then asked the owner if he kept his footage for more than 48 hours. He did. We watched the screen together in the back room. At 8:50 in the morning on the day the deed was filed, a car pulled up. A woman stepped out. She wore a wide-brimmed hat and large sunglasses. But I knew the walk. It was the same clipped, confident stride that had marched down my hallway for 3 years. But she was not alone. A thin man in a loose suit got out of the passenger side. He was holding a thick manila envelope. "Who is he?" I whispered to myself. He looked nervous, checking his watch, wiping his hands on his pants. He was the courier. He was the one doing the dirty work. Back at the firm, Dana was connecting the financial dots. She had pulled the corporate registration for the company that paid the rent on Tessa's virtual office. "It is a closed loop." "Marjorie," Dana said, circling a name on the whiteboard. "The entity paying for Bright Harbor's mail drop is a holding company called Apex Solutions. And guess who pays the retainer for Pine and Wharf Realty Apex Solutions? It is money moving from the left pocket to the right pocket. I called a freelance forensic accountant I had worked with during my time at Northgate. I sent him the public tax filings for Bright Harbour. He called me back within the hour. "It is a classic wash," he said, his voice crackling over the speakerphone. "They show incoming donations. Sure. But look at the expenses. 80% of the revenue goes out immediately to consulting services provided by anonymous LLCs. It is a ghost operation. Marjorie. They are not helping seniors. They are cleaning cash, armed with the forgery analysis and the financial irregularities." Dana filed an emergency motion. We demanded that Tessa provide immediate proof of marriage validity and the original documents granting her medical proxy. We stopped asking nicely. We demanded the court compel her. Tessa struck back hard. 2 days later, a process server handed me a thick envelope at my front door. It was a notice of a restraining order. Tessa was accusing me of harassment, stalking, and causing emotional distress to the victim, Evan Caldwell. She was trying to paint me as a deranged mother obsessed with control, hoping the judge would ban me from the courtroom entirely. "She is trying to silence you before the hearing," Dana said, tossing the papers onto her desk. But she made a mistake. Her lawyer sent over a packet of exhibits to justify her standing as his wife. "Look at this." Dana slid a document across the desk. It was a divorce decree from Nevada, dissolving a marriage between Tessa Langford and a man named Gary Sneed, dated 5 years ago. It looked impeccable. It had the seal, the judge's signature, and the file stamp. "It proves she was single when she married Evan," Dana said. "Or so she claims." I picked up the document. My eyes went to the case number at the top right corner. I had spent decades looking at case files. I knew the cadence of them. I knew that Nevada court case numbers in that district started with the year, followed by a specific 6-digit sequence. I stared at the number on the paper, D19 Fossil Y52CV. "Dana?" I said, my pulse quickening. "Look at the format. In Clark County, the year comes first, but the letter code for domestic cases is usually formatted differently in the index. And look at the spacing between the 19 and the 4. It is a double space." A typo Dana asked. "Courts do not make typos in case numbers," I said, feeling a cold certainty settle in my chest. The software generates them automatically. A human cannot type a double space into that field. It rejects it. I looked at the seal again. It was just a little too dark, a little too perfect. This was not generated by a court system. I said, looking up at Dana. She pasted this number on. And if she had to forge her divorce, then she is still married to Gary Sneed. I looked at the tiny extra space between those numbers. It was small, barely the width of a hair, but it was enough. It was the crack in the foundation that was going to bring the whole house down. I drove 3 hours to the county courthouse in Nevada, where the divorce decree was supposedly issued. The air conditioner in my car had broken, and sweat trickled down my back, but I felt cold. I walked up to the clerk's window, sliding the document Tessa had filed under the glass partition. The clerk, a woman with reading glasses on a chain, typed the case number into her system. She frowned. She typed it again. Then she turned the monitor slightly so she could look at me. "Ma'am, where did you get this?" she asked. "It was filed as an exhibit in a property dispute in Pennsylvania," I said. She shook her head. "Case number D, 19450CV, does not exist in our registry. The sequence skips from 449 to 451. And Judge Harrison." He retired 2 years before this date. I walked out of that courthouse feeling the pavement vibrate under my feet. It was a forgery, a complete fabrication. I called Dana from the parking lot. She was already ahead of me. "Marjorie," Dana said, her voice crackling with adrenaline. I ran a background check on Tessa in Arizona. She filed for divorce from Gary Sneed 6 years ago, but she never showed up for the final hearing. The case was dismissed for lack of prosecution. "What does that mean?" I asked, leaning against my car door. "It means she is still legally married to Gary Sneed," Dana said. "Her marriage to Evan is bigamy. It is void ab initio. From the beginning. She is not his spouse. Marjorie. She is just a woman who broke into his life. It was a victory, but it felt hollow. We could strip her of her title. But that did not tell me where my son was. Tessa could be a criminal, but she still held the keys to the room where Evan was sleeping. I drove back home in the dark, my mind racing. I needed a way inside Evan's head. I thought of Noah Rigsby. He and Evan had been inseparable since college, the kind of friends who spoke in a shorthand no one else understood. I met Noah at a coffee shop near the university. He looked terrified. He kept glancing at the door. I didn't want to get involved. "Mrs. Caldwell," Noah said, gripping his cup. "Tessa. She told me Evan didn't want to see anyone. She said he was ashamed of his condition." "Tessa is a liar," I said, leaning in. "She isn't even his wife." "Noah, did he leave anything with you?" "Anything at all." Noah swallowed hard. "He sent me an email a month ago. Just a string of numbers. He said, 'If I go dark for more than a week, use this on the drive.' I didn't know what drive he meant until you called. He wrote the numbers on a napkin. I raced home and plugged the USB drive back into my laptop. I ran a command prompt to access hidden partitions and typed in the code Noah had given me. A new folder appeared. It was titled, "In Case of Emergency." My hand shook as I clicked it. Inside was a photograph of a hospital bill from a clinic I did not recognize, and a voice memo. I clicked play. "If you are hearing this," Evan's voice whispered, sounding groggy, "it means she is moving me. She keeps talking about a recovery lodge, but I heard her on the phone. She asked them if they had a secure isolation unit. Mom, if Tessa takes me to recovery, that is not recovery. That is a prison." I stifled a sob. There was one more image file. It was a grainy photo taken from a window, showing a white van parked in his driveway. The license plate was clearly visible. I sent the image to Dana. 10 minutes later. She called back. "The van belongs to a company called Shadowline Medical Transport," Dana said, and I could hear her typing furiously. "They are a private ambulance service. Marjorie. They were sued last year for transporting patients to unlicensed facilities to milk insurance payouts. They specialize in discreet relocations." "Get him out," I said. "Dana. Get my son out of there. I am filing an emergency petition right now," Dana said. "We are not just arguing about property anymore. I am arguing immediate danger and abuse of medical proxy. We are going to force them to tell us where he is, or the sheriff goes to Tessa's door with handcuffs." I looked at the screen, at the pixelated image of the van that had carried my son away into the dark. Tessa had built a fortress of paper lies, but she had forgotten one thing: paper burns. And I was holding the match. The judge granted the emergency hearing for the temporary restraining order and the marriage validity challenge. We had 72 hours. The clock started ticking the moment the gavel hit the wood. turning my life into a blur of phone calls, printer noises, and the relentless vibration of notifications. Tessa panicked. I could see it happening in real time through the digital window Dana had pried open. Alerts pinged on my laptop. The listing for Riverbend Cottage vanished from the Pine and Wharf website. A transfer of $10,000 was attempted from the joint account. But the bank flagged it thanks to our initial fraud alert. She was trying to scrub the floors while the house was already on fire. She changed the registered agent for Bright Harbor Outreach to a generic shell company. But she was moving too fast. She left the electronic logs intact. Then came the email. It arrived at 4 in the afternoon from a throwaway address. There was no subject line. The message was just 2 sentences. You want to know where Evan is? Look at the outgoing wires from Bright Harbor. It was likely an accomplice. Maybe the thin man from the video or the receptionist. Someone terrified of going down with the ship. I forwarded it to Dana immediately. I am pulling the bank statements now, Dana said over the phone, the clicking of her keyboard audible in the background. Got it. There is a recurring weekly payment of $4,000. It goes to a facility called Silvermere Recovery Lodge. Where is it? I asked, grabbing my car keys. It is 40 miles north, Dana said. Marjorie, do not go there alone. If you break in, she will use it to paint you as unstable. We do this by the book. I am calling the sheriff to enforce a welfare check based on the evidence of financial exploitation. We met the deputy at the gates of Silvermere. It was a beautiful place, secluded by tall pines, looking more like a resort than a medical facility. The administrator met us in the lobby, looking nervous as he eyed the uniformed officer standing next to me. Mr. Caldwell is a voluntary patient, the administrator insisted, pulling a file from behind the desk. He signed himself in for stress management and addiction recovery. He slid the admission form across the marble counter. I looked at the signature at the bottom. It was the same shaky, traced imitation of my son's name. The pressure was even. The loop on the L was wrong. My son did not sign this, I said, my voice steady. He was in a coma 3 days before this date. That is not what Mrs. Langford told us, the administrator stammered. I walked down the hallway while the deputy spoke to the staff. A doctor in a white coat stepped out of a room, looking at me with recognition. He hesitated, then walked over. Mrs. Caldwell? He asked quietly. Yes, I said. I shouldn't be speaking to you, he said, glancing toward the administration desk. Mrs. Langford gave us strict instructions. She said you were the cause of his breakdown. She said you were toxic, and that any contact with you would cause him to regress. That is why we denied your calls. I felt a cold rage settle in my stomach. She had not just stolen his money, she had stolen his mother. She had used my name to build a cage for him. Is he safe? I asked. He is sedated, but stable, the doctor said, lowering his voice. We were told he was violent when unmedicated, but honestly, I haven't seen any signs of it. We did not remove him that night. The legal process required one more step to transfer him safely without risking a countersuit that could block me later. But we knew where he was, and we knew he was alive. I went home and sat at my dining table. The house was silent. In front of me was a stack of files 3 inches thick, bank records, forged signatures, the fake divorce decree, the witness statements, and the photo of the white van. For a long time, I had thought revenge meant making someone hurt the way they hurt you. I thought it was about anger. But as I ran my hand over the papers, feeling the texture of the evidence that would destroy Tessa Langford, I realized I was wrong. Revenge is not about inflicting pain. It is about dragging the truth into the light. It is about stripping away the beautiful lies until everyone can see the ugly thing hiding underneath. I closed the folder. I was ready for court. The air in the Kenton County Courthouse was stagnant, smelling of floor wax and anxious sweat. Tessa sat at the defense table, looking immaculate in a cream-colored suit. She did not look like a woman caught in a lie. She looked like a grieving wife being persecuted by a jealous mother-in-law. Her lawyer, a man with a booming voice, pointed a finger directly at me. "Your Honor," he said, shaking his head theatrically. "Mrs. Caldwell is a grieving mother? Yes. But she is also controlling. She has a history of refusing to let go of her adult son. This entire motion is a harassment campaign designed to cause emotional distress to my client, who is the legal guardian and devoted wife of the patient." I sat still. I did not flinch. Beside me, Dana stood up. She did not shout. She simply placed a stack of papers on the judge's bench. "Your Honor," Dana said, "we are not here to discuss feelings. We are here to discuss arithmetic and ink." Dana laid it out. The forensic analysis proving the signature on the deed was a tracing. The flow of money from the house sale into the shell company, Apex Solutions. The payments from Bright Harbor Outreach to the private facility where Evan was being held. Tessa's lawyer jumped up. "Objection. My client has spousal privilege and a valid medical power of attorney. The marriage certificate is on file." The judge, a stern woman with reading glasses perched on her nose, held up a hand. "Counsel, we have a challenge to the validity of that marriage. I want to address the issue of the previous divorce decree from Nevada." Tessa smiled confidently. She thought her forged document would hold. "We have an affidavit from the Clark County clerk," Dana said, handing over a sealed document. "It confirms that case number D19450CV does not exist. Furthermore, we found the records from Arizona. Tessa Langford filed for divorce from Mr. Gary Sneed 6 years ago, but the case was dismissed. She is still legally married to Mr. Sneed." The room went dead silent. Tessa's smile faltered. She leaned over and whispered frantically to her lawyer, "If the defendant is currently married to another man?" The judge said, her voice dry as dust. "Then her marriage to Evan Caldwell is void ab initio. It never legally existed. She is not his spouse." I watched Tessa's face go rigid. The words she had thrown at me in the hospital. "You are not family," were coming back to destroy her. "Since she is not his wife," Dana continued, pressing the advantage, "she has no standing to hold medical power of attorney or to transfer property. And we have this." Dana played the audio file we had sworn into evidence, taken from the USB drive. Evan's voice, tired but clear, filled the courtroom. "I never signed the deed to Riverbend," the recording said. "If Tessa tries to sell it, she is doing it behind my back. Mum, protect the house." Tessa's lawyer tried to object, but he was drowning. The judge looked at the timeline, the bank transfers, and the fake divorce papers. She did not look happy. "The court finds sufficient evidence of fraud to issue a permanent injunction," the judge ruled, slamming the gavel down once. "All assets are frozen immediately. The medical guardianship is revoked and transferred to Marjorie Caldwell, effective this second." Tessa stood up, her composure finally shattering. "You can't do this? I am his family. I take care of him." The judge looked over her glasses, staring straight at Tessa. "Ms. Langford, based on the evidence of bigamy and fraud, this court decides that you are not family. At least, not under the law. The gavel hit the wood a final time. It sounded like a gunshot. I did not smile. I did not cheer. I simply closed the thick file folder in front of me. The noise of the file snapping shut was the sound of a lie ending. I stood up, walked past Tessa without looking at her, and went to get my son. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you folks are tuning in from. So please drop a comment down below and tell me what city or country you are in. I love reading about all the different places my voice can reach. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more, please make sure you subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, hit that like button, and smash the hype button to help this video get discovered by more people. I appreciate every single one of you.